I don't know why that slide is not working, but essentially, we found that there are 3 skills that essentially IFAs need, and which clearly the wealthy want. They want what we call is the I know skill. So they want you as an advisor to them to be able to know a certain number of things. I think again, the first item in there, which is about knowledge of economy and markets, is really about the fact that, again, you go back to Uma's conversation. I think they want to be able to have an intelligent conversation with you. They may not know everything themselves, but they certainly think that you as an investment advisor need to be able to know that. And again, it's about going out there and having a conversation which very, very clearly is in their language. They need to be able to understand what you're saying in a very, very simple form. The second thing that they need you to know is what are their family's needs and what are their family's goals. I think a lot of us, do practice financial planning in our businesses. Some of us don't. I think we can call it by whatever name we want. But essentially, the whole understanding is really about knowing very clearly why someone is saving money and why he's investing that money with you. And the moment you have that answer, suddenly things become very, very easy. Again, to give you an example, we find that the moment there is a client of ours who let's say, for example, there's a client of ours who recently went through a serious medical condition, right? He has children who live in the US. And all of you know that mutual funds now don't accept monies, or most mutual fund companies don't accept monies for US residents. What happens is, if something happened to him, his nominees are his daughters, who are all in the US. And while the nomination process will work in terms of transmission in a normal course, the moment the money goes in the hands of the daughters, automatically the money will get redeemed and the money will come back. Now, the reason why we know this is because we know everything about his family, we know where his children are, and therefore the advice that we were able to give them on how to build his or her succession plan was different from what we would have been able to do if we didn't know everything about his or her family. Very, very critical. The goal that he had was that the money should transfer to my children without any difficulty. That was a simple objective. And therefore, the solution that we had to use was not a regular nomination process that you apply like for all your other clients, but you needed to give them something which was a little more complex. You need to be able to share information on things that impact families' finances. So for example, this whole debate right now about, or the good thing about inflation coming down in India. One of the conversations that we're constantly having with our clients now is that maybe if inflation continues in this trajectory and India now gets to a point where there is a government agreement that inflation in India should be 4% plus minus 1%, suddenly all of our goals may actually need to get reset, because from targeting inflation at 7-8%, we are now going to be in an environment of 4-5%. Now, of course, investment returns will also fall. It's unlikely that, if inflation falls, everything will continue to generate the same rate of return. But I think when you're having these conversations, this is very contextual, it's relevant to clients, they're able to understand inflation the right way, rather than about, CPI has gone from 4.31 to 5.12. I mean, that's got no context in there. The fourth thing is matching investment performance expectations. And here it's really, really important that the key word in there is expectations. A lot of what happens is really about what people are expecting from your investment portfolio. And therefore, we spend one meeting with clients just telling them what they should be expecting. It's full 1 hour just talking about expectations from an investment portfolio. And therefore, what happens is it's very easy for us to go back and tell clients that let's go back to our investment performance expectation meeting that we had initially. And that's where we said that historically data shows that equity returns can tend to be very volatile over less than 5 years. And therefore, if you're coming to me and worrying about what happened because we had a bad budget, then I think you shouldn't be worrying about it. Here's the conversation. You want us to talk back about it, we'll discuss it again. The last thing about I know is also that you should know what you don't know. And therefore, where you think you don't know something, you need to be having a network where you can go out and seek help. I think a lot of us need to understand our limitations. I don't think clients ever worry about hearing from you that I don't know as an answer, as long as it's not too frequent. So one of the things that you tend to do when you're dealing with wealthier clients is try to build that network of people who are specialists. They could be chartered accountants, lawyers, they could be a whole lot of people, but essentially you have to build them in, because that's when you're showing them that you're truly advisory in nature and your expertise lies in a certain area, and beyond that you're going to someone else. I then move to what I call the I care skills. These are essentially demonstrating that you know things, but you also care about them and their families. So what you'll find in here, and I'm just going to focus on a couple of them because the rest is up there for you to see, is a lot of us do want to do a lot of marketing of our practices. And obviously, that's good for growth of our businesses. But I don't think clients necessarily look at it in the same way. A lot of wealthy clients actually look at it as saying that this is actually going to make things worse for us, because now he's going to have to deal with so many more clients, and therefore the attention that I get is actually going to be less than what it used to be. So you have to be able to demonstrate that by giving them the sense that there is now an organization which has got created, and therefore the help that they will get will not change. So let's say, for example, if you tell someone that, I was at a conference where I was going to speak, and I got late because the conference was late, and therefore, I couldn't make it on time, and therefore your family and you and your family's dinner outing is out tonight. I don't think he likes it at all. So you might think you're being very intelligent and smart by actually going out there and telling him, oh, you know what, I'm actually talking at a conference. So, he thinks, oh, wow, this guy talks at conferences. But that's not what he's thinking. He's saying that this guy doesn't care about me or my family. The other bit which always kind of comes by is what we think is the most important part, which is what you do. And this is what I call the I do skills, which is essentially that, you can keep talking, you can keep knowing, you can keep caring, but the question is that what is it that you're actually doing on the ground? So a few things that we found very, very helpful is communication, which is very clear, very timely. So for example, if you've had a interest rate hike in 2013 on the back of the huge rupee crash that happened, the next morning before people got to work, there was communication of one page available for them to read, saying that this is what happened last night, this is what is likely to be the impact on your portfolio, and this is what you need to be careful about. But remember your financial goals: 5 years to kids' education, 10 years to retirement, whatever else it may be. What you'll also need to realize is that it's not so much about fees and commission. This whole debate happens quite often, but it's actually a lot about transparency. We've actually discovered that the more transparent you are about saying that this is how much money I earn, this is the amount of fee that I charge. So, for example, in our practice, we have a fee-based model. So we actually have fees from clients, and we also earn commissions. And we are very transparent, telling them that, this is broadly the range of money that we make. Our trail incomes are maybe 0.5% to 1%. Our advisory fee is whatever it is. And we find that the fact that you are not transparent is what creates the problem. It's not actually about the fee or the commission. Last but not the least is keeping financial documents in place. You'll be surprised at how important it is a thing for wealthy clients. It just seems like so routine, it seems like it's no big deal at all. But a lot of times, you'll find that if you ask people the top 3 reasons why they stay with you as an advisor, they will tell you that you just help them to be more organized. And that's something that, doesn't really require any skills at our end. So let's go quickly to the recipe to get wealthy clients. We think there's attitude, aptitude, activities. So what's the attitude? It's really about setting goals. What goals are we talking about? We're talking about 3 sets of goals. One are sales goals, the second is networking goals, the third is self-upgradation goals. These are all 3 different kinds of goals that you need to set for yourself. What tends to happen is that we find that a lot of people actually don't set these goals at all. They essentially set goals only at one level, which is number of clients, AUM, revenue. It depends on how you track your business. But essentially, that's a process-based item. So you will get number of clients because you have either networked or you have upgraded your skills so that those clients want to come to you. So essentially, you have to set goals in all 3 areas. You need to obviously be moving beyond Excel. I think the whole thing which Nirmal spoke about just before this was about vision and no vision. I think the challenge is about how much of a vision you're actually converting to reality. And I think a lot of us, and I definitely suffered from that when I started off, because I came from the corporate world and I was used to believing that all solutions in life come through Excel-based formulas. And I realized very quickly that that doesn't work at all. It's really about what's the activities and what's the meetings that you're doing, and that's really going to translate into achieving your goals. The key part in doing all of this is you got to do it regardless of what you think. So what happens is when you set a goal, you suddenly start thinking that, oh my God, no, but I don't think this sounds right. I don't feel like doing it today. Tomorrow is when we'll do it, etc., etc. I think that's where the whole challenge around goal setting happens, which is that you've put it down on paper, and then you start thinking about it on saying, did I set the right goal? I think the way to know whether you set a right goal or not is 3 months later to evaluate whether you've set the right goal or not. Not tomorrow morning when you had to do the first task. The next bit is about aptitude. And what's aptitude? It's about investing in yourself. That's our business. We are talking, walking ads of our business. And therefore what we keep saying is that the more you invest in yourself, the better off you're going to be. I think as an investment advisory business, I'm no different from a pharmaceutical business. A pharmaceutical business basically develops because of the fact that it has a R&D budget. It develops because it's spending time to build a pipeline of drugs which are going to come out and give different treatment. And we are no different as investment advisors. Our whole ourselves is everything that the client is buying. And therefore, we need to be able to very clearly be that. I'm sure a lot of you all have heard about how Anil Ambani became as fit as he is today. And obviously, it was because he came out of a press conference where he was told that how do you take care of a company if this is how you actually look? And this is how you take care of yourself. And I think that's so true for advisory businesses. The other bit is very clearly understand your proposition. Now, what happens is that your proposition can either be unique, which means that you're the only one person who does it. Very difficult to find this, because what happens is that requires a lot of effort to say that I'm the only person who does this. So I would tend to believe that for a lot of individual entrepreneurs, it's very, very difficult to find a unique selling proposition. I think what you will find is something which is different or something which is special. So let me give you an example. I think what a lot of individual advisors could do, which is different, is that they could be working on serious goal-based planning. I think it's different, but it's not unique. There will be 250 other people, probably in your city, who will be doing the same thing. There'll be probably 1,000 people in the country who will be doing the same thing, but it's clearly different from what another 1 lakh advisors are doing. And that's why it's so critical in terms of what you do. The other bit is, really allocating your, what I call the ST budget, which is your self-development budget. Again, it needs to go back to different places, and a lot of people debate, what this number should be. In our practice, we found that anywhere between 5 to 10% of the income that you earn should logically be going back in self-development. And I'd be surprised if I ask people in this room to put up their hands to say that, they actually have a self-development budget in their own balance sheet. Ultimately, this is what we are doing. This is our business, which is us. And therefore, if you have that budget, you need to put it to good use. You need to use it for soft skill development. Wealthy clients need soft skills. You need to be able to have a good conversation with them. You need to be able to have the right etiquette training. You need to be able to do the right things when you're with their family. Very, very critical. And a lot of this can be bought today at a very low cost. It just takes 2 days of training, you can get access to it. You, of course, need to spend money on research. And you need to figure out how you can be a specialist in something. Ultimately, everyone wants to deal with someone who's a specialist in something. You have to decide what that something for you is. There's no right answer on this. There's no one answer on this. But you have to discover something that you can say, I'm a specialist at. Again, it's not about uniqueness, it's about speciality. So you could position yourself, again, Uma spoke about SIP Patil. I mean, that's a speciality that I look at. And just like that, you need to look at what your specialty is and go out and talk to wealthy clients, remember that it has to appeal to the wealthy client. So for example, if a wealthy client doesn't believe in the proposition of SIPs, that cannot be a specialty when you're dealing with him. Last but not the least is activities, which is essentially that what you do today in terms of activity will give you your revenues tomorrow. So what you need to do is focus on high impact activities. The reality is time is the only inventory that all of us have as investment advisors. And therefore what we need to be able to do is figure out what is it that I'm going to do with my time. Number one is convert referrals into introductions. I think a lot of us ask for referrals. I think the way the world works today is that it's very easy to know who knows who. And therefore, if you ask for a specific introduction to someone, you are very likely to get it. Just for example, if you know that there is a brother-in-law of your client who you have discovered on LinkedIn is the ideal kind of client that you'd want to have. If you ask for a specific introduction to his brother-in-law, it's very likely that you'll get it, against asking him saying that, you know what, I've given you such good service for the last 5 years, look at your investment portfolio, why don't you give me some referrals? There's a big difference between the two. The second thing that we found is what we call strategic networking. So I think networking is all good, but you need to be strategic in terms of what you do, which essentially means that you have to be able to earn professional respect through the networking that you do. So a lot of people say, join a Rotary Club, for example. I think you find that benefits of Rotary or any other memberships tend to come if you get actively involved in the whole process where you start to take responsible roles, you give it a lot of time, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the benefit is going to come after a considerable period of time of investing, that precious time which is your inventory, before you actually are able to gain from it. Last but not the least is get into what are called referral alliances. This is very big all over the world. I'm not sure how much of it happens in India right now. We have some of these where essentially it's based on the law of reciprocity, which basically means that I refer my clients, you refer yours. Nothing else. There's no other process involved. There is no money changing hands. There is nothing else. The reason why this happens is simply because of the fact that clients do want, or other advisors do want their clients to get access to good advice. And if you're able to show them that you can give them good advice, they're happy to send people to you. Not every relationship will be equal. So it won't be that, every of these alliances that you build in will give you the same amount as you gave back to them. But the reality is that, when you have a section of 20 of these guys, on an average, from those 20, you will get the same number of clients as you gave to those 20 as a group. And that's a very, very important part for us to be able to develop our business, especially on the wealthier client side. Thank you very much.
In your practice, how have you dealt with competition? When you are going after wealthy clients, these wealthy clients are being serviced by the likes of Citibank, IIFL. How did you face challenge from these institutions?
So that's not an easy challenge to overcome, I must admit. But I think what tends to happen with a lot of these clients is that they do end up finding that a lot of the bankers do tend to be very transaction oriented as well. So the amount of time that they take in terms of discovering what you are as an individual tends to be fairly low. And therefore what will happen is that by the time the first meeting is over, there will probably be some product solution that will be there, or at the most the second meeting. I think what we've seen over a period of time is that the lesser we've been talking products early on, and this could mean as much as 3 meetings where you don't discuss products at all, we find that people are able to see that this is truly different, and therefore they are willing to switch. I think the process would be slow. They'd start off, test you out, but I think over a period of 2 years, we found that most of them move a substantial part of their wallet to us.
See, somewhat related to the first question. Wealthy clients are very egoistic. How do you handle them, and they do not necessarily respect IFAs? So how do you overcome that part of it? which is an ego gratification.
Right.
If I'm successful, I want to deal with someone who's from Citibank. I don't want to deal with an IFA. How would you deal with that?
Right. So I think this is really about, being able to position yourself right. And I think this is not about being an IFA or not being an IFA. It's about how you present yourself into meetings. It's about what you're doing before you meet the client for the first time. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that we do is that before we meet a prospect for the first time, we have actually sent in a lot of communication about us to him already. So it's not that he's discovering me for the first time during the course of this particular first meeting. He's got a professional docket which has already come to him saying this is what we do, this is the experiences of our clients, this is how we work with clients, and so on and so forth, which is no different from what a Citibank would have done. In fact, in all likelihood, Citibank wouldn't have done that before their meeting, but they would typically carry this into the meeting. So we find that a lot of this is typically going to come through how you go back and ask yourself saying that, how can I be treated as an equal? Because I am an equal. At the end of the day, I know more about financial advice than the client does. It's just that he may have more money. And therefore, as long as in our mind we are able to clear this up very clearly, I think we'll be able to get on that equal path.
Okay, now what is the frequency of meetings that you could expect or you should maintain with your wealthy clients? Is there any set formula?
So this is the area that we think we have some fairly dramatically different views from everyone else. And this is because we've learned it from experience. So when we started off, we used to actually believe that the more you interact with wealthy clients, the more business you'll get. So, we used to try to kind of meet them once in a fortnight, sometimes even once a week. And we discovered that we have nothing to talk about. Because nothing changes in people's lives in 1 week or 2 weeks, except for financial markets. And really the client doesn't want to discuss financial markets, or the wealthy client doesn't want to discuss financial markets. So over a period of time, we've discovered that the right way to address this is to ask the client how frequently he'd like to meet. So most of our clients are very happy being met once a quarter. Some of them are okay with once in 6 months. A sprinkling of them want to meet once a month. A sprinkling of them want to meet once a year. But essentially, most of our clients are very comfortable with either once a quarter or once in 6 months.
Now, very often you deal with wealthy clients, and there could be a situation where there is a difference within the family members. How do you handle such a sensitive situation?
So actually, the reason for the differences in family members in our experience has been because they've actually never sat together with who they perceive as a third party who's neutral. And therefore, the positioning that we are able to take in that entire conversation is really about being a neutral third party. And that's a little bit about the kind of fee models that you run, the kind of advisory positioning that you take. I'm assuming for a minute that we can keep this as simple as, family members who are husband and wife, who actually think that, so the wife wants to be very conservative, the husband wants to be very aggressive. We've discovered that goal-based planning actually does solve this problem very easily, because what it allows you to demonstrate is trade-offs involved. So for example, if I'm in a situation where I want to be very conservative, but I'm not able to achieve the goal, then the client understands the trade-off, and so does his wife. And they themselves figure out whether they want to be conservative or they want to trade off the goal. And that tends to work more often than not. So the only way, in our view, that this can be solved is to ensure that both of them are with you at the same time. And that always happens. I mean, you can force that to happen by refusing to have the meeting till both of them are at the same time in the same place.
Given the kind of time and attention that you give to wealthy clients, is it a good idea for you to look at getting 100% share of his wealth, or should you be happy with just one part of it?
So what we've discovered is that getting 100% or close to 100% of his wallet is where the maximum opportunity will lie. But you don't always get the wallet, but you get the share of his mind. And therefore, what you end up doing is you end up becoming what I would call is a master advisor. So even if he deals with someone else, he still calls you and tells you that, this is my banker, this is year end, he has to put money into something. Now he's given me these 4 products. Can you just evaluate it and tell me? And we'll do that for them. So essentially what has happened is you've become his go-to man for anything to do with money. And I think that's good enough, because what it then means is that effectively he's bonded to you in a good sense. And therefore, it gives you an opportunity to kind of raise your fees, do a lot of other things which you cannot do necessarily only with getting AUM.
And we will have a quick coffee break and we'll come back in 20 minutes.